Ooh. Excuse the pain. My back's all fucked up. But anyway, another edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. We'll have a special edition today because I'm sure that everyone, film buffs that is, has probably a handful of movies that they religiously pull out once a year and watch. And sometimes every time you do that, you notice different stuff. Well, I pulled out Once Upon a Time in the West last night from 1968. And it's probably one of the best westerns ever made, but it wasn't thought of that way in 1968, probably for a lot of reasons. First off, I think that the American audiences were sort of slammed with a bunch of Western extravaganzas, for lack of better words, that went along, like How the West Was Won, The Way West, and McKenna's Gold, things like that, that ran a couple hours or close to a couple hours and were panoramic in view and had a shitload of stars, even though most of them were only in there for a few minutes apiece. But that might have been one reason. The other reason was that basically Once Upon a Time in the West had a pretty intricate plot line. And when U.S. distributors got a hold of this movie, which was originally close to 3 hours long, and decided to hack a lot out of it, it sort of distorted the plot line a bit. Plus, the third reason was that Henry Fonda was cast against type as a villain, and American audiences back then couldn't swallow that for whatever reason. So, again, a lot of things happened, and it sort of disappeared, then wound up on TV, of course, horribly cut up. And the weird thing is that on the theatrical version, one of the cuts was taking out Lionel Standard's scenes completely. And Lionel Standard was one of those guys that was blacklisted during the McCarthy era and went over to Europe to find work. So maybe that might have entered into it. I don't know. You never can figure out why shit is chewed up and spit out by American distributors, but it seems to be the way. Even The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly had roughly 20, 30 minutes excised out of it. But I think for Leone, this was basically his dream film and his dream cast because, all right, you had Charles Bronson as harmonica, and Bronson was considered for all three of the Dollars films, but that never happened. You had Henry Fonda as Frank the villain, and Leone really wanted Henry Fonda in the second Dollars film as Colonel Mortimer, but, you know, back then nobody knew who Sergio Leone was. And he also got Jack Elam, who actually he had wanted to be in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly as one of the gunmen, actually the gunman who lost his arm shooting with Eli Wallach, but that never materialized. So he got them all, including Jason Robards as Cheyenne, and a couple of guest stars, Frank Wolf, Lionel Standard, and Keenan Wynn, and Claudia Cardinelli in the lead as the widow McBain. So, and that was, honestly, I think that was one of the first times that a woman was cast in a lead role in a spaghetti western. So, like I said, involved plot line. I mean, there's a massacre in the beginning that Frank and his gang gun down the McBain family, who the head of is Frank Wolf. And that's when Frank kills the kid. And they all wear these dusters, which is what this Cheyenne gang wears, Cheyenne played by Jason Robards. And he's a little pissed off that he's being blamed for the massacre. And then you have Charles Bronson, who meets, was met at the train station by three killers sent by Frank, who has some kind of weird history with Frank and is out for vengeance. And there's, of course, a backstory with the three killers involving Clint Eastwood. Actually, Leone had offered the role of harmonica to Eastwood, and Eastwood had turned it down. There was a huge rift between the two because half of the money for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was Eastwood's salary. So he had another request that basically he wanted Eli Wallach, Lee Van Cleef, and Clint Eastwood to be the three gunmen that met the train, signifying in his mind, the segue of the Old West into the New West. But of course the lone holdout was Eastwood, and that shit to bed. So instead you had, Jack Elam, Woody Strode, and Al Mullock. And Al Mullock committed suicide after that scene. He jumped out the window of his hotel room. I don't know what the real deal was. Supposedly he had a drug problem and couldn't score and was going nuts, but that's another backstory to the film. like I said, intricate plot line involving that ranch that McBain had that everybody thought was a joke, but actually it had water underground and the railroad was going through that, and that would have been the gold mine, and that's why Frank, under the employ of a crippled railroad baron, wants it, but has his own ulterior motives. And I think another thing that might have derailed it too is there's not a lot of nonstop action in the whole thing. It's pretty much well played out, but it's played out beautifully. And like I said, it's funny how many of these films from back in the '60s were panned upon release, but are now considered, cinematic classics. And Once Upon a Time in the West is in that league. It's almost like I said, it's like The Godfather. You got to sit through it. You really pay attention to what's going on to get the whole gist of things. I think back in '68, people were looking for a bang, 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 bang movie, and they didn't get it, and that's why it only ran for a week. And I don't know if I'd said this before. This is the only Leone movie I never saw theatrically because it only lasted a week and bang, it was gone. And really didn't get a re-release. So, excuse me. But anyway, it's a really good film. Every time I watch it, I just see more and more, what a brilliant director Leone was, and how, he just used these actors so well. And if you can catch the Blu-ray, I don't even know if it's still around anymore. Paramount and Sergio Leone is whatever the company is that owns the rights to this stuff. They all put it and restored it, so that on the deep Blu-ray there's a restored version and a theatrical version. But definitely worth a look, and it's a great movie. So back to Boots' situation, she's really been good. I mean, the whole thing with the food might have been the problem as far as the relapse goes, but so far she's been good. The other one's been good too. It just sucks it's been so miserably cold you can't take them out and let them do anything. So, they're stuck in here dealing with miserable old me. So that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. And above all, stay safe. We'll catch you on the flip side.